Hi everybody, I'm Sharon Zambito of Sugar Ed Productions Online Cake School.
And I'm Sydney Galpin from Simi Cakes.
I've got Sydney with me today. She's going to show us some cool techniques using Isomalt. What you got for us, Sydney?
Yes, I'm going to show you how to use cookie cutters and impression mats on your Isomalt today. And so one thing that a lot of people don't know about Isomalt is you can actually use any metal cookie cutter with it. So if you, and I'm sure everyone has at least a few, I have a few hundred metal cookie cutters. You can use all of those with Isomalt. I am going to show you how to do it with fondant first because they are very versatile. So you can make something out of fondant the same way you would do it with Isomalt. It's just a little bit different technique.
Okay.
So I'm going to show you with fondant first. We have a piece of blue, just straight fondant rolled out here. And I have a cookie cutter, so this is a stingray shape. Okay, so you can see I'm just going to punch out my shape, and I usually just kind of jiggle it a little bit and then peel the excess over the top.
I'll take that.
Put that away.
In case we need it.
Carefully just peel it out, and you can see our stingray shape. Now this looks good just like that, just like a plaque or an applique to a cake, but I'm actually going to put that impression mat in it. So this is a silicone impression mat, and you can see from the size of it that it's generally used for the tops of cupcakes. You actually roll your fondant out, you imprint this, and then use a 3-inch cutter to put over top of your cupcakes. But I'm going to use it on my stingray to give him a little bit of texture, just a little bit more depth, make him a little bit more interesting.
Right.
So I'm just going to lay him over, gently push down and kind of hold it in place with one hand while the other fingers push down. Okay, get that all evenly indented. And then I peel it back and I'm going to have a texture. If it didn't quite push in where I wanted it to, the nice part about this one, or if I have any edges that didn't fill over since it is a little bit smaller, the nice part about this is it's a random pattern. So you don't have to worry about lining it up. You can just re-imprint.
Just go ahead and patch it up where,
Exactly.
where it didn't.
So I'm going to push a little bit harder in that other spot.
Oh, look at that.
I'm going to push over here.
And that's cool because the bubbles make me think of under the sea and
Exactly.
water.
So you can see that texture there, and then I can take it on a paper towel. You don't want to dust or paint on a silicone mat, but I can take a pump brush filled with some pearl dust. All right, so this is just luster dust, and I'm just going to go over it, and that's going to pick up all of that detail even more and make it stand out. So you can see how shimmery and pretty that would be for an under the sea themed cake.
Definitely.
Nice?
You could put that directly on the side of your cake as an applique.
Exactly.
You could let it firm up and do it as a stand-up plaque.
Exactly.
You could also put that on a cookie made with the same cookie cutter. So that
Exactly.
could be your decoration for the top of the cookie.
Exactly. So that would be perfect. Just like fondant, we would let it dry. But you can also use this, like I said, with Isomalt. So I'm going to take that same cookie cutter. I'm going to put it on some paper towels over here. I'm going to take a little bit of cooking spray. It doesn't matter what kind, if it's canola, vegetable oil, olive oil, as long as it's not the baking spray that has the powder in it. You don't want to use that. It has to be straight oil.
Straight oil, no flour in it.
Right, but it doesn't matter what kind of brand it is. I'm just going to grease this fairly well. You don't want to, do too little or else it's not going to release. So I do a generous amount of spray. Sometimes I'll take another piece of paper towel and just lift it and spread it a little bit just so that there's not little dots of the oil. You want it spread out and evenly coated, but you don't want to wipe it off too. So I just kind of wipe there.
All right.
I'm going to go back to my silicone mat, lay that down, and I've heated up my Isomalt in the microwave for about 30 seconds and then 15-second intervals just till it's a liquid. Now Isomalt is a sugar substitute, so it's not actually sugar, it's completely sugar-free. It's made from beets, so it's sort of like a byproduct of beet sugar, and it works the same way as a lot of like the boiled sugar techniques, but Isomalt is going to be a lot easier to work with. And it's also a lot clearer and a lot stronger. So I always use Isomalt whenever I'm doing these kind of techniques.
Okay.
All right, so I have my greased cookie cutter down here on the mat. I'm going to take that liquid Isomalt. Now this is about 300 degrees, so you don't want to touch it. I would highly recommend wearing gloves or wearing oven mitts when working with this because you don't want to burn yourself. It is not fun. All right. And
very,
now,
very hot.
Yes, very hot. I'm just going to fill it in. And if your cookie cutter is bent a little bit, it's all right if it kind of starts to seep out the bottom, because I would just set something heavy on it like a book or a cake pan, anything, a container that is going to weigh it down, and then it would almost make like a score mark that any excess that seeped out would just crack off. So now you have to keep in mind when you're doing this not to fill it up too high because you don't want it too chunky. I really just fill up enough that it covers over the bottom. And then also, you don't want any sort of shape that is too intricate. The more intricate it is, the harder it's going to be to release afterwards. So notice that the stingray has very smooth edges. Something a little bit more detailed like a snowflake or something like that is going to be harder, so you may have to grease it a little bit more.
Might be hard to get those pieces out without the little intricate parts breaking.
Exactly. So now I'm going to let this sit for probably 15 to 20 minutes because this metal is conducting heat. And so the metal, you do have to be careful, is going to be as hot as the Isomalt. It's going to be 300 degrees, so you don't want to touch it. Make sure it's in a spot that you don't need to move it. You can just kind of let it sit 15 to 20 minutes, and then we'll come back and we'll see if our piece is cool.
All right, let's let it firm up and see what we get. So it's been about 15 minutes and the Isomalt's completely set up, and now Sydney's going to show us how to get it out of the cutter, right?
Yes, so the cutter is completely cool, so I can use my hands now. I'm going to flex it outward first so that I don't risk snapping anything. So I want to make sure that it's loose all the way around. So I'm just kind of jiggling it and pulling it out away from the Isomalt piece, just like that. You can see how it just pops right up.
It came right off.
So all those little pieces that had run under the edge just completely broke off. Now I'm going to be able to flip it up, peel the silicone away, and then you have your pretty piece.
Oh, look at that.
Isn't that nice? So it does look pretty just like that if you were to leave it, but I am going to put that impression in it.
Okay.
So I'm going to go ahead and let's see. First I have a paper towel under here. I just want to wipe any of the excess oil off of it because the oil, we are going to be torching this, and the torch doesn't react well to oil. So we want to make sure that all of that excess oil, you don't have to get it all off, but just any of that excess stuff.
Could it actually cause a fire?
It could cause a fire if you had too much. I've never personally had that happen because I don't have a pool of it. I just have a little bit smeared on, and it usually is fine.
Okay.
Okay.
Something to think about, though.
Yes, definitely. So I am going to be torching the other side, the side that was laid down onto the mat, because you can see that sometimes that can collect bubbles. You can see how it's not really crystal clear on the other side. So I am going to go ahead and set this down so the face that was touching the mat is up. I'm going to go over it first with my torch, and I am going to do small sections. If I were to torch this whole thing at once and try and impression it, the parts that I had torched first are going to be too cool. Okay, so by the time I get back to it, it would just be too cool. So I'm going to start off with just a little section on one of his wings here.
And that's just a creme brulee torch that you can get at like any restaurant or Bed Bath & Beyond.
Exactly, it's just a little blowtorch, yep. All right, so I just kind of keep going over this until it looks like it's slightly bubbling, until it looks like it's turning back to a liquid. And that's when I'm going to be able, it's going to be soft enough to lightly, imprint this.
And how hot is that now once you torched it? You
Once
definitely still don't want to touch it with your hands?
Yeah, you definitely still don't want to touch it with your hands. But it's enough through the silicone that it's not going to burn you.
Okay.
Okay, and then I just peel it back. And you can see I have that impression in it. So see how pretty that is?
That is so neat.
So it cleared it up and it put that impression in. So now I'm going to be able to go over on the other side.
And I notice it's a little bendy now.
It is. So you do have to be careful that it doesn't distort, that it doesn't snap. All right, and then again, I don't want to push too hard because it can crack it, but I want to be able to see that impression. All right. So you can see how pretty that is.
I love it.
So again, you could just leave it like this, but I am going to go over it with a little bit of paint. So I'll get that paper towel back here. I don't want to paint directly onto the silicone mat because the paint does not come off of the silicone. So I just lay him here. I'm going to first go over it with a little bit of just dry luster dust. So I'm using a color called Blue Jay from the Sugar Art. You can use any sort of luster dust on here dry because it is slightly tacky. So I just take a little bit onto my paintbrush, and on the textured side, I'm going to go over my piece. And I know it's hard to see it because it is on blue now, but I'll hold it up.
I think I'll get a white paper just so we can put it on there and see the difference. Yeah.
So this is just going to be a very, very light color, okay? You can see the difference of that. So I'm just going to take a little bit more, dust the whole thing. You can do it completely solid color. You can do tie-dyed with different colors and kind of go in different spots.
You could airbrush this too, couldn't you?
You can also use an edible airbrush on this, yep. As long as you go in just very thin coats with the airbrush color, it turns out beautiful. All right, so you can see that. I'm also going to go in, I have some piping gel mixed with a little bit of disco dust that I will trace around the edges.
And just remember that disco dust is not considered edible, so if you're going to put that on any pieces, those pieces are going to be for show only, not to be eaten.
Yes, definitely. You don't want to risk that. All right. So I'm just going to Go all the way around the edges here. You could do it, mix it with a color of, say, gel color, and then paint little details onto it if you wanted to. I'm just going to kind of line it, and you could use either this side as the front, or you can flip it and use the other side as the front. They both kind of have their own individual looks. I usually use this side, the smooth side, as the top.
I think I like that better.
Yeah, it's both really, really pretty. And there's our finished piece.
I really like this. I would have never thought that you could use an impression mat and put that onto a piece of Isomalt.
Yeah, isn't that cool? And you could do that for an under the seat cake, or you can even change the shape of the cookie cutter to apply it to the theme of your cake.
Really neat. I love that. Thank you for coming and showing it to us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was fun.
I hope you'll come back again.
Definitely.
Everybody remember that Sydney teaches cake decorating classes all over the globe. She teaches Isomalt, chocolate work, fondant, gum paste, you name it, she does it. Check out her class page and also her online store, which has a wide variety of cake decorating supplies. That's simicakes.com.
Yes, and for more fantastic cake decorating and sugar art tutorials, make sure to check out Sugar Ed Productions online school.
So until next time with Sydney.
Bye.
Bye.